Hey, this is Brandon with Pickleball Effect. Today we're doing a review of the new Engage Pursuit Ultra series. So the original Pursuits came out back in 2021 and they were really popular models and still are, primarily because they offered a thicker core option that still has some put away power. So you got the benefits of a thicker core, like more stability and a bigger sweet spot, but you had access to power to put the ball away and finish points when you needed to. And it really wasn't until recently with the introduction of thermoformed paddles that we're starting to see more options on the market of paddles with thicker core and more power that's similar to the Pursuit series. But the Pursuits are not thermoformed, so I'm very interested to see how this compares to those brands that are really popular right now making thermoformed paddles, like Legacy, Vatic Pro, and 6-0. So when you look at this paddle on Engage's website, the first thing you notice is the price tag. This thing's retailing for $260, which is a huge number. This thing better play really good to justify that price, especially when we're seeing really good paddles out there right now that are selling for $180 and even some under $150. But before we jump into the play test, I do want to point out some of the differences and things they changed in the Ultra series compared to the original. So the first thing they changed was the facing material. The original had a graphite facing, this has a carbon fiber facing. When you feel it, it feels grittier compared to the original, but it doesn't feel the same as your typical raw carbon fiber design that we're seeing from most other brands. And when you put the facing material under a microscope, you can see that it looks different compared to that raw carbon that everybody else is using. So that's the first thing I'll be paying attention to in the play test is how the grit wears out over time, and be doing a spin test just to see how the spin compares to everything else out there. And then Engage also injected some foam around the perimeter of the paddle. However, when you take the grip off, you don't see any of the foam in the handle. So most other paddles are doing that foam injection all the way through the handle, but it looks like Engage opted to only do the foam injection in the head of the paddle and not all the way through. Sticking with the handle, it's unfortunate that the polymer is still exposed for a paddle that costs this much. You'd want a really quality handle that feels good. That exposed polymer just makes the handle feel a little cheaper, and I don't like that. But they did make some updates to the handle that makes it more comfortable than the original series. So when you look at the paddle on the back of this picture, that's the original Pursuit, and then the paddle on top is the new Pursuit, and you can see the difference of the shape of the insert. The old Pursuits have that oval shape, while these new ones are more octagonal. So I like the effort they made there to make the handle more octagonal shape. Overall, not really happy with the handle. It feels a little cheaper, the exposed polymer isn't good, and they just feel bulky. So the thicker core options that they offer are 4 3/8 in circumference, which is bigger than your standard 4 1/4. So they feel bulky and they feel a little blocky still. They do offer these paddles in thinner core options, and these handles do feel a little more comfortable compared to the 16 because the core is thinner and that runs through the handle. And then the last thing they changed is in relation to the weight. So the original Pursuits were very head heavy. That was a big complaint that a lot of people had about them. So they tried to fix the balance point of the paddles by adding some sort of counterweight technology. They don't really tell us what they did, they just call it counterweight technology. However, when I put these paddles in a swing weight machine, the swing weights really didn't change much. So when I compare the swing weights of the original MX 6.0 and the Ultra MX 6.0, there's only about 1.5 points in difference. You really can't tell a difference in swing weight until you get to that 5 to 10 point difference, and so the swing weight is very similar as the original series. Additionally, they're sticking with the same shapes and thickness options, so they have an elongated shape and a standard. This is the elongated shape, and then this is the standard shape, so you can see the difference there. The longer shape has a longer handle, while the standard shape does have a shorter handle. And then they offer both of these paddles in 2 different thicknesses. So there's the 6.0 models, which are the thicker paddles, and then they just have the MX and EX models that are thinner. So the thicker option is 16 millimeters, while the thinner option is 13 millimeters. So I have both shapes and thicknesses of these, so I'll be playing with them all and will tell you my thoughts on the differences in performance there. So let's go put these on the court and see how they play. After drilling and playing with the Ultras for the past couple of weeks, here's my review of their performance. To be real, this could be the shortest review I've ever done because there really isn't much difference between the Ultras and the original Pursuits. The Ultras could be described as a softer version of the original Pursuits, and that's really the only difference. I still think there may be a place for these, and some people will like that they are softer, but I was hoping for a Pursuit that had a lighter swing weight, offered more spin, and maintained the same level of power, but that's not what we got. They had the same spin level, the same weight balance, less power, and more control. The original Pursuits were poppy and powerful, so bringing down the power rating might be a good thing for those who couldn't control the original series well. But I also felt like the power of the originals was part of their magic sauce and played a big role in what made them so popular. So I was disappointed that the power level came down. There's already a lot of good control paddles out there that are much less than $260, so I felt like the Ultras needed to maintain the same level of power to justify the price and truly compete with the popular thermoform paddles out there. Had the Ultras kept the same level of power, then they could have been a great option for players wanting that thermoform type performance, but without the stiffer feel that comes with the thermo paddles. You really could control them nicely though. They had a very pleasant, soft feel to them that was reminiscent of Gen 1 raw carbon fiber paddles, but they had a little more power than your Gen 1 carbon paddles too. However, they didn't have as much power as the thermo paddles from 6.0 and Vatic Pro. They are somewhere in between. Both of the thicker core models played very similar to the Ben Johns Hyperion CFS 16, where they had good control with drops, resets, and dinks, though they still had a little more power than your typical control paddle. The thinner models were more powerful and had a similar power level as the 16mm thermo paddles, though they were poppier and harder to reset in comparison. I actually really liked the feel, speed, and power of the 13mm models, but I couldn't take full advantage of the extra power they gave me. The spin just wasn't there in moments when it normally is to utilize and manage the power. One of the letdowns of the Ultras for me was the lower spin rating. My spin test came in around 1400 RPMs, which is less than your Gen 1 raw carbon paddles. With the spin level being so high on these new thermoform paddles, the Ultras felt sort of slippery in comparison. I wasn't as confident attacking off the bounce, and my rolls at the net just weren't the same. Going back to my 6.0 double black diamond paddle right after this made that paddle feel super grabby. So here's my recommendation. These could be a viable alternative to thermoform paddles for those who have tried thermos and don't like the stiffer feel they offer. I think the Ultras offer more control and have a softer, more pleasant feel to them that is easier to connect with in comparison, while still offering more power than your traditional Gen 1 raw carbon paddle. However, overall, I think Engage missed a big opportunity with the Ultras. I was a fan of the original Pursuits and was very excited for these because I was thinking we would get an improved Pursuit series with more spin, more forgiveness, and better weight balance, and that same level of power, but instead we just got a softer version of the original Pursuit series. With the price coming in at $260, it's hard to justify picking one of these up when the Pursuits don't have a unique value proposition other than being made in the US, and there are many other comparable control and all-court type paddles out there that are under $200. So that's my review. Thanks for watching, and I hope it helped.